Welcome to the session. I'm Eric. We are here with the core, the development team that makes the runtime what it is. And they're here to answer your questions, like right from the beginning. You don't have to wait till an end of a session and a big talk. Everything or anything you wanted to know. And this is anything you wanted to know about ArcGIS Runtime. These guys can answer that question. Anything. But probably only answer questions that have to do with the ArcGIS Runtime, right? Political questions and things like that. They'll probably take those offline. But anyway, this is how it works. So this is for you. You have questions you want to ask the development team right away, rather than meet them at the island or something. You can have this forum here, but you record them in a GitHub repo, these questions, and we read them off during the session. But this is really good because we can engage with you throughout the year in answering these questions, and we will answer all of them, whether we do that answering in this room today. We hope so, but we may not. But we will answer every single one of those questions that come in. So here's the GitHub repo. Yeah. Yes, okay. So Mike reminded me that we also encourage folks to kind of really take these questions beyond this point and really focus them on GeoNet. But if you do have questions that were submitted into this repo today and we didn't get to them today, you can finish that conversation of questions with us and we answer those and then we close them out. So I will go to, let me just click on this guy here. Go to the repo, and what did that say? You're browsing away. Okay. So I'm going to pop this up a little bit, hopefully make it a little bit bigger. So here's the repo. Go to issues, and it looks like a lot of you have already started. This is great. And put them in, and we'll go through and answer these questions, and I'll update that later. Okay. So if you don't have a GitHub account, it's okay. You can still ask your question. Come on up and write it on a piece of paper, and our Mark right up here will take those questions and put them into the GitHub repo. Yeah. Good. Okay. What else? One more housekeeping. The team will answer all of your questions throughout the session and then beyond. So, any questions? Are we ready? Let's go. Yeah. Any questions? They'll put it in the repo. So do you want to, so should I just start from the top here? Start from the bottom. Bottom. Right. Except this one. Yeah, we'll do this one. So the first one, it's a question. It's a multi-part question. Do you want to take them? Do you want me to take one at a time, or you want me to just one at a time? Is packing support planned to provide minimized software footprint using, and he's using the .NET SDK. And that sounds like a Morton question. Do a check 1, 2 and stand away from this guy.
I'm not sure exactly what was meant by the packaging support. We don't have any specific work with anything with respect to deployment. I mean, if you want to minimize the software footprint, by default you would get both 32 and 64-bit binaries deployed, but you can actually choose to just choose one specific architecture and it will skip deploying the other half. And that cuts the size significantly down.
What I meant was if I implement specific functionality, it would be great to have a tailored package that gets deployed, but this might
I see. Like if you don't use Raster, you don't want all the Raster libraries, what you mean? Yep. To reduce the size. Are we? We talk about it.
It's on the roadmap.
It's on the roadmap.
Okay, great. Thanks, Warren. You can either hang on to that and pass it. So the next part, the next question in this submission is better support for technical licensing planned? Named user-based, runtime package-based. Duration of named user token hard-coded or configurable. Apps for offline usage might run into outage if token is outdated.
Okay, so the licensing for runtime, there's two ways to license the runtime. One is with a named user, and one is with a fixed license key that you buy in packs of deployments. And so if you're using the named user to license the runtime, your user can sign into the application, it can be authenticated, and it will unlock the runtime, and it will stay unlocked for 30 days. And then once if your user goes offline, they can be offline for 30 days, but after that time, their authentication will time out. They've got to reconnect to either portal, they've got to reconnect with a portal, either the online version or the version that's running on premise, and they re-authenticate themselves. If you have a user that wants to run longer than 30 days disconnected, then you need to buy a permanent license key. So, and then that way you actually burn the license into the application itself. So there's two ways to do it. It's not configurable. It will run for 30 days and it will time out on these 30 days. But after that, you can't say I want it for 40 days or I want it for 50 days. If you want that, you need to go to the permanent license key. Is that the first? That
was the second bullet.
Okay.
So the third one is, when will feature server REST API expose data source and query def information on the feature layer level? Information required. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's okay. You can.
Yeah.
I come up with an answer to it.
Okay, so for map services, we do expose some of the capabilities, but you're saying on feature services, you want the same capability that's available on a map server to swap out data sources sort of under the covers. We don't have any plans to change what the feature service can do right now. As far as the runtime goes, we just sit on top of the services, the REST services that are available to us.
Is support for tailored packaging of specific projection transformation data planned? Whole repo is really big in terms of megabytes that need to be downloaded for providing proper transformation on client and offline mode.
We don't have any sort of built-in tools that will support. There's no sort of user experience when it comes to the developer to say I want these transforms supported, and so I'll just copy over one or two files. I think but you can, as a developer, you could decide if you're doing, this is really important, if you're doing grid-based transformations, you can look for, in the PE data folder, you can look for the actual files that are relevant for your transformation, and you can copy these across manually. Then the software will find them and use them. But there's nothing built into the SDK that allows you to have a nice user experience to do that. If the files are not there, then the software will perform just a default sort of formulaic-based transformation, but it might not be what you want. So this is really an issue for grid-based transforms, and you just have to manually do it.
Okay, so let's go to the next one. More, better, simple samples to exercise building box functions. Okay, let's look at this. Most of the apps shown here and on the samples hit hard on new features, but don't exercise other functionality like the geometry engine and all the functions inside of that. That's a good point. Anyone want to respond to that one? Because I'll say yes, absolutely, we'll do that. Unless you guys want to.
That's the product manager talking.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very functional API. High level, low level. There's workflows we want to demonstrate so that people put their high level workflows together and they can make runtime, very workable for them. But there are also those fine-grained diamonds that people need to use, and we need to tease those out and really show people how to use some of the functions that are in the fine-grained API. So we hear you definitely, and that's pretty common. So we'll try to do a little bit of, continue on our mission and do a little bit more of that as well. Licensing. Okay. Let's see here. And if you're just coming in, here's the GitHub repo.
I can take the licensing.
Okay,
I
you
guess.
don't get the licensing. You know the
So
question.
could you explain the licensing model again? So Runtime has, there's levels of licensing, and then based on the level, you can actually enable the functionality two ways. So with Runtime, we have 4 levels. It starts at light, which is a no-cost deployment. Light licensing is basically read-only access to your maps and data that have come from the platform. And that data can come from ArcGIS Pro, and you can create a package and deliver it to your application, or it can come from online, where you take data from a feature service or from a tiled service and you take it offline. And so that's light. Basic is the next level up, and there is a cost associated with basic, and that is all about editing. So as soon as you start to edit content, you need a basic license. Standard is the next level up, and that really is about advanced analysis and access to local data. Data that's not come from the ArcGIS platform. It might be shapefiles, it might be a raster file on disk, it might be a geo package, etc. It might be a KML. That's all covered under standard. And then the last level, the highest level, is advanced. And that just pulls in more advanced analytical tools. So you've got 4 levels. There is an extension called the analysis extension, which pulls in advanced spatial analyst, network analyst tools, and that can be added to standard or advanced. So we've got the levels. So how do you actually get a license? There's 2 ways you can do that. One of them is with a named user, and one of them is with a fixed deployment license that you can purchase in packs. And so the named user is a really good one, because you can just ask your users of your applications to sign in using their named user account, and it unlocks your applications and the runtime capabilities. And that one named user can unlock any number of applications for that user. If you're using the deployment packs, you're burning a license into every single instance of an application that you're making. And so if you've got 4 applications on a machine, you actually need 4 deployment licenses for each application. So if you have named users in your organization, I would definitely recommend that's the way to go. And then the last point here, the light license, it's a no-cost deployment, but it says it requires a license fee if there is revenue. So this typically comes up if you write an application and you put it into the App Store. And if you write an application and you put it in the App Store, if it's free, then there's no issue. If you put it in the App Store and you require your users to sign in using their ArcGIS Online account or their portal account, there's no issue. And that's exactly what our applications do. If you put an application in the App Store and use a light deployment license and you burn it in, if your application generates revenue, and that could be through advertising or advertisements that you put into the app, or maybe you charge $2 for it, then you need to have a paid developer subscription. So you don't pay for the actual application deployment, but one of the requirements of the T's and C's that you accept is to have a paid developer subscription. So that's where, I think David, I was actually in that session that we talked about the architecture and the light license, and the question did come up. And David said you just need a paid developer subscription, which starts at $20 a month.
Yep, cool. Good one. Okay, the next one. What does high accuracy GPS support mean?
So the high accuracy GPS support that we're looking to add means that we're going to add a new location data source that parses and handles NEMA. So it'll take in that input of NEMA data from the receivers that you're using. But also along with that, it'll also deal with projections. So you'll be able to specify what projection transformation you need to use to be able to bring that data in. So it's, yeah. So yeah, it's about NEMA, which is a standard that most of these GPSs do output, and then consuming that inside of the runtime.
Good question. Oh, you want to quickly follow up on that one?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
We're running into some issues, not necessarily runtime, but just trying to extract out the GPS data streams. We have AVL in our trucks,
So you'll be able to, so the question is about, there's a, I'm not going to say non-standard, but there's a different source for NEMA strings rather than some of the more traditional ways to the location data sources on the device. So you can actually subclass, I think, one, should not stand in front of the speaker.
Yeah, right.
You can actually make your own custom location data sources. So you could actually feed in position information from wherever you're getting it from. That will include, you'll be able to do the same thing with the NEMA data source as well. So it doesn't matter if you can get access to that, you'll be able to feed it into the runtime.
We'll save the ducks question, or what happened to the ducks. We'll save that one. Yeah, because. Okay, good. Here's a good one too. Sometimes, so we need better. Is this like we need better explanations of why errors occurred? Yeah. So okay, sometimes in development you hit an error. You know, did you want to just? Anyone want to say anything? Yes, we want to keep improving, and it heard you loud and clear. Yeah, we hear this often, and we've done a great. I think the team has done a great job of actually bubbling up a lot of really good information up to this point. There's still more as the platform matures and as we adopt more of the platform capabilities through runtime. We gotta keep on that, and really appreciate that question. So. All right, what native raster formats does the runtime support? And Carrie answered that, right? Do you want to vocalize that?
Yeah, we support CUD or the ArcGIS format and
Right, there's a link here to the list of supported raster data formats. Good question. So let's finish up that. So is there, okay, you got that. Great. Boy, took care of that one. Will the .NET Runtime support the new broad file system access setting for UWP?
Yeah, it should. I honestly haven't had a chance to try it. I think it was released 2 weeks ago in the entire build or something like that. But from everything I see, it should definitely work. And if it doesn't, I will make sure to bring that back. But yeah, this definitely helps some of those issues you have with data you can't get access to, and you have to copy it into the app folder just to read them. But it also does beware. This means if you want to put it in the store, usually this capability is not allowed in the store.
Cool. All right, moving right along. What are the technical limitations of implementing local server in Universal Windows Platform and Xamarin? That's a great question that just explains itself. That's good.
For Xamarin, for iOS and Android, local server is COM, right? So it just won't run on mobile device. The whole way it's written is would have to port all of local server. Yeah, so it has to run on a desktop. So UWP technically is a desktop, but the problem with UWP is it doesn't allow to call into localhost. It should have to run local server outside UWP because they just have too many restrictions on what you can and can't do in there. So technically you could probably hack it so a local server could run and you can call over it, but it's really blocked by UWP. It would not be pretty.
All right, a multiple platform options question. What are my best options to support Windows 7, 10, iOS, and Android devices? I was leaning towards Xamarin, but it looks like UWP does not support Windows 7. Would I need to maintain a WPF and a UWP Xamarin project? You got the mic.
Sure. Well, I can at least talk from the Xamarin side of things. We had a cross-platform session yesterday where we actually walked through all the pros and cons from all our options. If you want to support Windows 7, yes, you need to build WPF. You can't use UWP. But because Xamarin, UWP, and WPF actually has all the business logic is the exact same thing, you'll be able to share most of your code. And then it's just, you'll have to create a view specific for WPF, and then a view specific for Xamarin Forms, but then everything else, all your code behind your view models, all that stuff will be completely reused. In fact, that's how we build it. I think at least 95% of our source code is the same to build for all 4 platforms. So you'd get something similar.
Okay, great. If, for those who've just come in, if you've just come in, here's the repo. Create an issue and ask your question, and the dev team is all up here to answer Your questions. Okay, let's go. Let's see where we are. Another license question, or did we answer this one already? To test if a license is valid, we have to create an app domain every time. Is there a better way to do it? We let the client provide his own license key in a text box. Do you guys need more info on that one? Going once. Stomped the. We need T-shirts so we can throw these out here. So for those, okay. We'll come back to that one and check back on the repo, and we'll.
We'd like clarification on which runtime API. We're assuming it's .NET, but we could get clarification on which runtime API for the licensing question.
Okay, cool. It might be iOS, but yeah, might be .NET. Okay, HTTP client handler. Let's look at this one. Are there plans to have an API to inject a custom HTTP handler? Also, it's multiple part here, so let's do that one first.
Yes. In fact, it's already in our update 3 source code. I don't think it made it into 2.1. I'm pretty sure it didn't. Someone's not.
Cool. All right. Also,
just want to add to that. Actually, in Android already has a framework for doing something like this. That wasn't working. We fixed that. So in 2.1 you can actually do this on Android. But on update 3 we'll have a way to do that for all your web requests. And number of HTTP client. We'll take a look at that. See if we can reduce it a little bit. Yeah.
So does that answer that? You guys done? Or no? You have more? Okay. Oh, you already know it is, yeah. All right, let's hear that one while we refresh.
Jeff Jackson, just remember, the West is best. We'll see you in the final.
While the Kings are like struggling to hang on, we'll just ignore that one. Client side, high DPI, large format, plotter printing. Printing. What is needed to print a map locally in very large formats? Is there an example app of this? So very large formats, you mean large size, large scale
yeah, I can.
output?
We actually don't have printing support for large formats printing inside the runtime. It's a requirement that's on the backlog, but it's on the backlog. We don't actually have any active development plans to support large format printing at the moment.
Okay, cool. And when will the .NET Runtime support arcs? These are
Question?
true arcs, I guess, right?
True curves. We have plans to add true curve support, and it's part of our effort to support the utility workflows. And so true curves will be coming in. They'll start to come in at the end of this year, and you'll see more capabilities coming to the runtime next year. But you'll start to see it towards the end of this year.
And to tag onto this, if you want to articulate a specific workflow that you're really looking for and you want to elaborate on that, you can put that in this issue too. All right, let's see, we're moving pretty well here. Okay, so it looks like we're still waiting for more questions. Do you want to go back to any of these, or you guys want to give a public service announcement about anything? Yeah, Rex. Yeah, there's a...
Yeah, just a clarification on the license question. Just a short answer is that if you've built an application and you've licensed that application at the light level, which is free, it doesn't matter if you generate revenue from a runtime perspective. You can put that in the store, you can distribute that 1,000 times. There's no cost associated with that. If you choose to use ArcGIS Online, whether online or take that data offline, then you'll need to purchase a deployment subscription. That's an ArcGIS Online deployment subscription. And that means a paid deployment subscription. I just want to clarify that. So.
Right, that's a good point. And if you're not sure, you can always call us, right? Esri customer support, Esri customer service. If you say, look, I'm going to or you can submit the question that you have about licensing. You're not really sure about where to find the information. Runtime LIC at Esri.com. That's still alive, right? Runtime LIC at Esri.com. And we can clarify that for you. But yeah, if you're not generating revenue, you're pretty much there. Let's see. Also, again, just to reiterate, keep the questions coming here. We're going to go through, and we've articulated answers. We're going to write the answers in here over the next couple of days and weeks. But we want you to continue to engage with us as much as possible through GeoNet. How many of you use GeoNet as developers? Very good. Yeah, that's our engagement channel with you.
For a PSA, how about Mike, can you show us the dev site and maybe some of the changes that are out there to maybe where you can find.
Oh, okay. So we're juggling here, right? We're making this up as we go along. That's good. Okay, here. Does somebody want to come up and demo this? I can just talk through it and trip through it, but here is your stage. This is your one-stop shop. You're a developer, you want to engage with Esri. Here is your place, developers.arcgis.com. It's a complete mapping and analytical platform for developers. You're a developer of multiple languages, platforms. You have all of your choices here. This is your gateway to know everything to how to get started, all the way down to real low-level programming with the Runtime API, all the way from the top to the bottom. But what we're really proud of here are these ways that developers can get started understanding our platform. So we have these things called Getting Started with ArcGIS Developers. These are dev labs. So 10 to 15 minute workflows that you walk through, that we guide you through data and workflow descriptions, and you can begin to learn how to get the platform to work for you as a developer, whether you're using web development or whether you're using native apps. Here we're in the context of talking about native in this because it's runtime, but this covers everything. Looks like Rex wants to explain some things. Okay. Yeah. So that's a really good resource. And then you can use one of these guys.
I actually just want to highlight, oops, I'll hold that a little further away. I want to highlight a couple of the capabilities that we have, or the documentation that we have on use of licensing, just because this ends up becoming a question quite frequently. Is that going to work? Is it going to shortcut me? Ah, of course. Okay.
Sorry,
hold on, I didn't put the slash in there. Really? No. There we go. There we go. Good stuff. Okay. There is a sort of a master page that talks about the licensing capabilities, and Ewan touched on some of these license levels that we have available today. Talked about a developer program that enables you to gain access to the Runtime SDKs as downloads on the developer site. And of course, when you create a free account, ArcGIS Online, or I'm sorry, when you create a free account on the ArcGIS for Developers website, you do get an Essentials plan, which is free, as part of the developer program, and you can download the SDKs and start using them right away. What this high-level page does is it kind of walks through the different levels associated with ArcGIS Runtime licensing, from light through advanced, covers some of the high-level capabilities and what's necessary from a licensing option. So, as Ewan mentioned, we have a deployment license or a license key, which is baked in or burned into an application, tracked per app per device, available to a single user, and then a named user approach, which actually the license travels with the named user. And so this will walk you through a number of the different capabilities associated with those license levels. As mentioned before, light is available at no cost, and so when you log into the developer site and you create that free Essentials plan, you can go to this licensing page, and you can see your licensing key. What I'd have to do here is log in to be able to see this. I'm going to log in as you, Eric. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, good stuff. So I've generated a light license key. I can just copy this into my runtime application. I can call set license regardless of which runtime SDK I'm using. And now I've actually licensed my application for light use. That means that functionality that's available above the light license level will stop working. You should get some message to indicate that you've accessed that type of functionality at runtime. One way to dive in and look a little bit, is this a touchscreen? Okay, good. The touchpad's not working. One way to take a look at what we can do in more detail, or where the licensing details break out, is to go into the specific Runtime Sdk documentation. And here you're going to get more details on what happens when you're in development mode, the different sort of properties of the runtime that you see in developer mode, like a watermark. You're going to get maybe some console messages associated with a paid license level functionality. And when you use local server, you're going to get a little pop-up dialog. The key here is that as you work through some of this information, you're going to get down to a very specific. Let's see if we can get past some of the details. Get down to a step-by-step walkthrough of being able to use the code, and which code, I guess the API that you're using to license your application. If you're looking at very specific details, let's go back up to the top and we can hit the API reference, and this is something that's in .NET, but it's in every SDK. If we take a look at the API reference for WPF, what we're going to see here is at the very top, there's going to be a licensing details by type. And so what this is going to do is it's going to walk you through the specific components, objects, classes, members that are used or that are licensed at a cost level license, at a license level that requires a fee. And so you can iterate through, you can work through this list. You can see this top section here talks about the different components, the types, and the types that are licensed at the basic level. And as we start to move through this list, we can see there's another section here for standard, and then we move on down to other paid license levels, and we also include extensions. And so what this should do is it should give you an idea, technically within your code, if you're going to call or going to use some of these components, whether or not a certain level of license or extension is required. Right? So this should be available for every API at this stage. Yeah. So regardless of which one you use, this same information is available.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good to know the entry points into studying what parts of the API are licensable and which ones aren't, and we feel that we've clarified a lot of that, hopefully. So let's see if there are any more questions coming in, and you can shout them out too. Like, okay, here's a couple more. Let's see. Okay, what build tools, CI/CD, does the team use for delivering new versions of the runtime? Woohoo! Some insight into what our internal tools we use. Oh, did he bring it up? Check 1, 2. You probably want to stand.
Well, apart from just using the normal compiler tool chains for the various platforms that we run on, we don't have a continuous integration framework, but we do have a build process. We use Jenkins to automate the build process. We use an on-premise GitHub enterprise system to handle all of our source code. We use it to deal with issues, and the teams use it to kind of organize their work. We have the build process that we have that's automated with Jenkins. We have a daily build, happens at noon, and the result of the daily build is a set of SDKs that people can use to test and check out the functionality that's been merged into master the previous 24 hours. Every 2 hours after noon, we build the software completely, from the C++ code all the way to the APIs, and we'll build debug, 1 2-hour build, and then 2 hours later we'll build release, 2 hours later we'll build debug, 2 hours later we'll build release. So a development team, as they're checking code in, can see if they're breaking anything, because we don't want the noon build to break. So nobody likes to check in basically after 10 o'clock, because that's your last chance to get a validation that the check-ins and the merges that you're doing have not caused a build issue, because we always like that noon build to work successfully. We have about 50 or so build servers that are building the software in the various versions, the various platforms for a particular version. But then typically we're always working on a minimum of 2 versions. The last shipped version and perhaps some QFEs and bug fixes, as well as the next full sort of production release. So our build system has over 100 build servers running every 2 hours. We use Jenkins to automate a lot of that. What else? I guess hopefully that answers the question.
Great. Getting stories on the backlog. Let's see, did anybody answer that one yet? Okay, no. What metrics do you use to get stories on our backlogs? Is there somewhere I can go to log a feature request? So,
the best place to be is here.
We've got
right now.
Got a couple product managers up here, Rex Hansen, myself, and that's a good way to engage with us.
Right, so Eric and I are product managers here obviously on site for the runtime. Metrics do we use? Well, we use a variety of different methods for determining what is prioritized within our backlog. We obviously take feedback from customers, partners, to determine what we need to be able to target and achieve. We also look at supporting our internal apps group, because most of the native apps that are built within Esri are built on top of Runtime. And so and what they're usually looking at is the ArcGIS platform. So introduction of features and functionality across the platform is pretty critical, and so we need to be able to support them as well. So 2 different ways of basically bringing in different feature functionality and then being able to prioritize what's necessary to support that. And so we iterate over that to determine what's best and be able to categorize and then deliver that in a variety of updates and releases. As far as getting stories in the backlog, there's a number of ways to communicate with us, requests for new features. Obviously, if you can work directly with us, with product managers, or if you're working with someone on the team that you can be directed to us to discuss maybe feature functionality and workflows that you need to be able to support. There's a variety of other mechanisms to interact with the team. We have a GeoNet as basically a forum or a GIS community online that you can actually log an issue or a question or a request, and we're watching that quite fervently. If it's a request that's associated with a public repo, like our toolkits or samples, those are GitHub repos, and if you have an account, you can actually log a request there or a question on those repos too. So there's a variety of ways to communicate different feature requests with us. If you're working with an account manager, oftentimes it's easy to work with your account manager to contact us and discuss or walk through some of those workflows that you need to be able to support. So I think what's critical there is there's a variety of different channels to get to the runtime team, development team, to communicate what you need. And the idea there is that we'd like to provide you as much information as possible and obviously be as honest as possible as to when we can achieve some of those features that you need. So feel free to reach out and we'll discuss.
If you're Twitter users and followers, you can certainly follow us. ArcGIS Runtime is our handle, ArcGIS Runtime, very simple. You can message us through that as well. That's one way to engage with us and also engage with the community that follows ArcGIS Runtime. Pre-planned workflow. And
so two good questions about the pre-planned workflows there. One of them, the first one is, why do we only currently support extents when taking your data offline? And it's definitely an enhancement we want to change. We want to be able to take a polygon and be able to support going offline with a different shape other than extend. Currently, the reason why it's an extent is because not all of the backing services support being able to take an area of interest. So we're working on getting support throughout the platform, and then we'll bring that into the runtime when we have it there. But definitely an enhancement that we've heard before, and it is on our roadmap to fix. The second one, we decided on some limit for the number of pre-planned areas. This is definitely something that we can adjust over time. We did want to have a limit, so we don't wind up creating hundreds and hundreds of them, putting undue load on the back-end systems. So this was a number that was determined, but it's a conversation that we can have about, is it too low? And I'd love to hear afterwards what your use case is, how many areas you're looking to support, and that feedback will be really helpful in helping us kind of hone in on the right one. And I'll take the next one too. So this is a question about create runtime content, which is a GP tool or a sharing option inside of ArcMap for producing runtime content that you can use in your runtime apps. And when we were working with ArcMap, it was really about taking all of the data and the layers and getting it enabled for runtime and using it in your app. We've definitely shifted our focus to working with maps, and with that in ArcGIS Pro, there is the Create Mobile Map Package tool, which really allows you to bring your whole map over and simplifies that experience. So definitely encourage whoever's using Create Runtime content to start taking a look at the Create Mobile Map Package inside of ArcGIS Pro. But that doesn't answer the question. Right now, we do not support the definition query for filtering data, and there isn't any plans to bring that into ArcMap at all. Those enhancements will be coming inside of ArcGIS Pro for the Create Mobile Map package.
Great, thank you. Dynamic projection on offline runtime content. Any update or fix on dynamic projection on offline runtime content when used with the Runtime SDK? Any update or fix on dynamic projection on offline runtime content?
What content? Who asked the... Are you talking features in a geodatabase or something else?
This is a tough one because it's a colleague of mine that just messaged me about it. I imagine it's taking something in a runtime geodatabase
And maybe, do you do like projections on the fly and things like that in your apps?
So right now we do reproject the features in a mobile geodatabase, but rasters, vector tiles, other data sources we wouldn't reproject. So depending on what the data you're talking about is, it may or may not be something there. So
good. Okay. Let's see. All right. Pre-planned offline content, features of interest. Will there ever be a way to generate pre-planned areas to take features offline that have a specific attribute value? Is that Antti? Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that Antti might jump in, but might be somebody else. Yeah. Yeah, we'll come back to that one. Good one, good question. You stumped the team here. Best way to store large amounts of data for use in 3D. What is the best way to store large amounts of data for 3D to utilize with Runtime? We currently store all of our data in a mobile geodatabase and use Runtime SDK for Qt, thank you, and ArcMap. Create runtime content to create the mobile geodatabase. Offline support, use of raw DTED. So there's large volumes of data,
I can have a go at answering this one. So when you actually run the Create Runtime Content tool, it will look at specifically raster data. It will look at the raster data, and if it can efficiently put the data from various file formats into a mosaic raster data set inside of a geodatabase, it will do that. And if it doesn't think it's going to lose quality or it's going to bloat the size, if it sees a raster format that it can't do that efficiently with, it'll just copy the raster format across as is. Mr. SID is an example of that. You don't want to uncompress a Mr. SID and store it in a raster mosaic dataset because it would bloat the size of your package. So the actual tool will try and make the best decision for you in terms of raster. The reason we ideally want to put it into the mobile geodatabase is one file. It's easier to manage on the client. It's not a series of files, but we will try and make the correct decision.
Okay. Datum change in map layer projection. Let's see what this one is. Does Runtime support different datums for layers that exist on the map?
Yes. There is, we added into update 2, we added support for doing datum transforms, and we support formulaic transforms between datums as well as grid-based. But for the grid-based, you need to make sure you deploy the grid files that come as part of the SDK. But we do support transforming coordinates from one datum space to another datum space.
Great. Okay. Thank you for these questions. Thank you for being here and pumping these in. These help us also, do better on our FAQs. So you're contributing to our messaging here too.
And I've just thought of a follow-up comment on the datum change. Runtime will by default pick what it feels is the best route between the two datums, the best formula to convert the coordinates. But you as a developer through the API can choose which one you want to use. You can ask the system, what are the datum transforms that are available to go from this reference system to this other reference system, and you can get a list and you can decide exactly which one you want to use. But there's a built-in database within Runtime. It's the same database that the projection engine uses for Pro and the server, etc., and it will try and pick what it feels is the most appropriate datum transform. But you have control as a developer.
You guys want to come back to the offline, pre-planned offline one, or should we just?
You can do it.
We're sitting here trying to figure it out. So the back-end feature service with Create Replica, what we actually use for generating the offline areas, does actually support being able to specify a where clause for taking features offline. As far as we remember, and what we're just looking for is, I'm pretty sure it's just supported and works. And that should, if you have that defined in your map and you use the Python API for an example to generate those offline areas, we're pretty sure it respects that in your map. The complication comes in if you have multiple layers pointing to the same backend data source. If they each have a where clause, a definition expression on them, then we'll bring over all of the features because we can't merge those together. But I think this is supported now. If there's specific things, definitely like to hear about it. We can see.
Yeah, and also one of the options that you have is that you use the REST API directly to create the areas, and that's where you can specify the where query directly in your calls. So if you have the case that you want to limit it, you might just want to use the REST directly.
Yeah,
should work.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do with the REST API, obviously, that some things that we haven't caught up with yet, the REST API comes in quite handy for sure. We've got 10 minutes. We can keep going. What's that?
Should we wrap it up and take questions?
We can wrap it up and take questions. Yeah. But the team will be up here anyway. So if there are things that you didn't want to really push in here, or you want to share some comments anonymously, or you want to talk to the team, I think there's a couple minutes after the session that they'll be here, but most folks have to go somewhere else. But yeah, there's another one. Let's look at it. All right. Is there any chance that the minimum Android API level, oh, I love this, will go above the current 16 in June or January release? Is that going to be Justin, or is that going to be Rich?
Yeah, so we actually already have a deprecation notice right now on update 2 that this will be the last release that we've supported API 16. We'll be going up to API 19 at update 3. And that's, what's that? For ARM v7 support.
ARM v7, right?
Yep.
Maybe you can elaborate a little more as to the motivation for your question. That would be great, but.
Currently, we minimally do 15, which is what we understand very. And we're in the middle of looking at upgrading, but it was just a question to understand where you guys are going to be with it.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of advantages to raising that, and most devices don't run. Most of our clients don't use anything back and forth. Most are Android 6 or so. We were just curious.
Yeah, I'll say that we certainly want to keep going and stay in step with Google and their recommendations for upgrading because of the support that they'll eventually, let go of. Doesn't mean that they'll tell people to cease and desist, but the App Store won't, as that progresses, it won't allow API levels at certain, as you progress. And we want to stay in lockstep with that. We do have customer base that has specific requirements that they need to stay on older hardware for certain reasons, so we have to kind of straddle that. But we certainly hear you. We want to keep progressing so that you stay in a supported window for us and also for the underlying technology. So yeah, good question, and we hear it quite a bit, and yeah.
Yep, thanks.
Good. Let's see. Yeah, this is really good. Do y'all find this useful, or we've been doing this a couple years? We like doing it. This is a way that you engage with the team directly. We want to continue to build community through sessions like these. But as long as it stays useful for you, we want to keep going. Let's see. You guys have any other thoughts, comments as we come to a close here? Okay, yeah, I think we verbally at least covered a lot of these, all of them, but we'll continue to articulate our answers in these issues. Great. Well, we're up here for at least the next 10, 15 minutes or so. So if you want to talk offline, more than happy to engage with you, but we'll just keep the floor open. Thank you very much on behalf of the team here.